So went and did the work for the first 2 hours. And I mean, Heather, it was like devastating. I mean, most people have never seen poverty or suffering like that.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I wouldn't call that like a trauma, but it's like, it just, that type of thing like writes on the person that you
Yeah.
are,
Yeah, it
you
does.
know? And I mean, really life-changing experience. But for me at that time, that was very difficult to process. So I definitely like cried.
Are you walking through a storm that feels like it will never end? Do you wonder if life's storms have stolen the beauty from your life for good? You're in the right place. My name is Heather, and like you, I've been through a storm or two and wondered if life would ever be beautiful again. Here we share warriors' words, stories of discovering beauty after battles, and the worth in your wounds. Pick up your sword or boxing gloves and join the battle. Your words are powerful, my friends. Make them warrior words. Welcome, warriors. Slave of Jesus in Mary, Catholic wife, mother of four, and co founder, CEO of Catholic Owned. Brooke Joiner is originally from Colorado and spent the first 4 years of marriage in her husband's native Italy. A convert to the faith, her professional background is in business management, project management, and strategic operations. Since founding Catholic Owned in 2023 in South Florida, the company has launched its app and grown beyond the local area to include thousands of listed businesses across the country and serves nearly 12,000 app users and counting. Now, before we hear from Brooke, have you heard about the nonprofit that I'm starting? Please check out Ko-fi.com. That's ko-fi.com/warrior words for all the details. And I'm going to put the link in the description. Now, grab a tissue and join Brooke and me as she shares about the challenges of meeting your spouse in one country when each of you is native to a completely different country. Let's rock. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. We are blessed to have Brooke Joiner here with us today. Hi, Brooke. Welcome to the Warrior Words podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Heather. It's an honor.
I am so glad that we were able to sit down and have this conversation because, as I was telling you earlier, we have a lot of episodes on this show that deal with like the big T, the capital T trauma. And a lot of people do experience that, but all of us experience day-to-day challenges, day-to-day stresses, and just things that are maybe a little bit more out of the ordinary, but not too far out. And when I read your bio or your about section on your website, I was like, it's really interesting to me. So we're gonna start there because everybody else hasn't read your about section, and I just want to talk about your story with your husband, how the two of you met, and the challenges that arose from your meeting. Or wait, maybe let's rephrase that a minute. There were some challenges, but the absolute beauty that came from that.
So yeah, we met. I had recently converted to the Catholic faith at Easter, and this was in 2012. This was in 2012. And my patron was, or is rather, Mother Teresa. And for a long time, maybe 9 or 12 months, I was feeling sort of like called to go to Calcutta. And, a lot of different sort of I really kind of refer to them as like arrows, but like things like pointing to Calcutta. So
Hmm.
like just little things that would happen. And um, to the point that eventually it was just, you need to go to Calcutta. There's an urgent appointment. You must go. And I said, yes, I will go. Um, and I wanted to go and volunteer at the first Mother Teresa house. And that is called Kaligat, which is the House of the Dead and Dying.
Okay.
So what they do is the sisters and the volunteers go out into the streets. So in India, there's the caste system. So, and there's also a lot of poverty.
Hmm.
And basically, the problem is that the government only gives like welfare, like public assistance to people in the lower castes.
Okay.
So the upper castes traditionally were more wealthy, but in modern times they could be just as poor as the next person. But they do not have access to the public assistance the way the lower castes do.
Okay.
And so this creates a very difficult situation in India. And so, anyways, so but the thing that happens, no matter what class you're in, really, is that if a person is old and dying or injured and dying, they just throw them out on the street. They don't,
Oh, wow.
care for them. And partially is because they can't afford to. And so Mother Teresa and her sisters go out would when she was alive, and now the sisters and volunteers go
Mhm.
out and they pick these people up off the street. They bring them back to this place called Kaligat. They clean them up, feed them if they would like to be fed, and basically allow them to die with dignity. By the time, so then after the breakfast with the sisters, you get on the buses or you walk to the different volunteer sites
Okay.
around the city of Calcutta. It's a very large city. So, um, so I get on the bus with other volunteers and I finally see some Americans. And and so I went up and I said, "Are you guys Americans?" And they turn around and they're like, "Yeah." Thank you, Lord. Finally, thank you so. So they were American seminarians.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, I'm so glad that I met you guys." So I did went and did the work for the first 2 hours. And I mean, Heather, it was like devastating. I mean, most people have never seen poverty or suffering like that.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I wouldn't call that like a trauma, but it's like it just that type of thing like writes on the person that you are,
Yeah. Yeah, it
you
does.
know? And I mean, really life-changing experience. But for me at that time, that was very difficult to process. So I definitely like cried, you know.
Yeah.
Like I had to go outside and like I still remember I like cried and it was just like a turning point in my life for sure. So then I go back and do the work the last 2 hours. Again, I mean, a very difficult couple of hours. I get to the end and I walk up to them again. And this time there was only one of them. The others had gone back already. And I looked at it. His name was Jack. His now father, Jack. I said, Jack, are you sure I can't come with you? And he said, no, I'm so sorry. You cannot come. But, and he steps to the side and says, go with Matteo. And Matteo was standing right there. And so at this point, I mean, I was like devastated, like broken inside from
Hmm.
everything I just experienced. I was mad that they wouldn't like, because I was kind of like a spoiled person, generally speaking. So I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you know. So I was mad. And then I was looking at Jack and I looked at Matteo and I was like, fine. And that was my response. And then
Well, I have to interrupt just a second here because most people will be listening, but I do put this on YouTube, and the defiance that was just on your face when you said fine. It's
and
just
I was just that much attitude the whole
yeah,
at that time. Like that was very real. So which is terrible. I mean, I should have been grateful. I should have been anything other than like
yeah,
begrudgingly accepting this gift, you know?
yeah.
So I said, fine. And I went and got my backpack from the, volunteer area. I came back. Everyone is gone. Only Matteo is there. And I was like, okay, I'm ready. Like, he doesn't speak English. So thankfully, Jack had spoken with him to say, go with her on the bus, take her back to the mother house because my where I was staying was nearby there, and like make sure she eats something, basically. So Mateo like had the mission, and I was like begrudgingly accepting this gift. Um, and so, but he said, he gave me a hug and he did speak, basic English, he
Mhm.
said um some nice things, and then we got on the bus. And so a really cool thing because in Indian culture, they the women, remember I said it's really unsafe.
Mhm. Yeah.
So if if a woman goes out alone, or excuse me, if a woman goes out, it cannot be alone. It has to be with a brother, father, or husband.
Okay.
So if you ever see a woman out and she's with a man, that's who she's with. There's no other explanation. And then if
Gotcha.
a woman is alone, they take that as license to attack her. So, okay, so we get on the bus. I'm with Mateo. I'm just like an emotional disaster at this point, but I had my sunglasses, I had my little backpack, and I sat down and he was standing in front of me because it was busy.
Hmm.
And there was this older man sitting next to me. And he, just like an older gentleman, not causing any trouble. So so Mateo, at some point, a seat opened up behind me, I believe. And I was looking down because I was like kind of ignoring him because I was still mad.
Yeah.
Just terrible. But that's what happened. So then I was like looking down and then I looked up and he was gone. And I
Uh-oh.
like, very quickly went from like defiantly accepting this person's presence to like, where did he go? What am I gonna do? Now I'm alone. What's going on? Like very quickly.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
And so I was looking around, looking around, looking around. And then I think Mateo saw what was happening because he was in the seat right behind me. So like he put his hand on my shoulder. So I like turned and looked. I was like, oh, okay, like back to. And then I wasn't like as angry anymore. I was like, okay, okay. So then the guy next to me turns to me and says this, Heather, I kid you not. Don't worry, your husband was with you the whole time. 15 minutes after meeting him.
Yeah. Well, because like you said, there's no other explanation, no other accepted explanation.
And then,
Uh,
we got married 13 months later. So it was kind of this providential, prophetic moment um,
oh,
right there at the beginning.
well, that is, most people, I guess, don't meet like that.
No.
I mean, I'm sure there are some that have fear and defiance in their initial meetings, but oh, so then, okay, so the two of you meet in this foreign country. You can barely speak to each other. How did you get married 13 months later?
Great question. So, Matteo was there with a group from Italy. So I basically just spend my free time there in India with them. They had a
Hmm.
whole guest house to themselves. So, um, like they were very kind and warm and welcoming. And some of them spoke more English than others, which was nice. But like mostly I was just grateful to be like safe
Yes.
and like have food to eat with them. And they also knew where to get food. So
Okay.
like you can't just like eat any of the food. Um, so while we were there, we knew we wanted to get married right away, even though we couldn't speak a common language. Like on the second day, that was like
Wow.
decided. And
Wow.
yeah, yeah, that's pretty unusual. So
Yes. And I think that's what I meant in the beginning when I'm talking about challenges, because it was kind of a whirlwind,
yeah,
and you have this whole language barrier, and not only that, you both live on different continents.
right, right, exactly. Exactly. And so, yeah, we just knew, thankfully. Well, then after a few weeks, we each went back home. And at that time, Google Translate was in its infancy.
And it's still not great.
Oh, but it's so much better than it was, Heather. Oh, it was so bad. It was so bad. But so yeah, so what we do, we would like write each other emails
Okay.
and like translate them. And then we would like write what we wanted to say and then use the translator and then like read it to each other on the video call.
Love
That's
will
pretty
find a way.
I mean, really, that sounds so funny to say. But that's what happened. And so yeah, so we would do, video calls because we had eight, 8 hours of difference
Yeah, yeah.
of time zone difference. So, like after lunch was like after his dinner, like 9 o'clock at night.
Hmm.
And so, and like also he worked. So Mateo is way more mature than me and had like a career. I was like a nanny. So I was just like, so he like had to go to work the next day. So we couldn't talk for hours and hours except on the weekend. Um, but just to say like hello, how was your day? And get through the like
Hmm.
beginning of the conversation was like 30 minutes because we had to sit there and go. So I mean, it was a lot of patience for sure.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine. That tests your patience right off the bat. And so I guess if you
Well,
can go ahead.
I was gonna say I asked God to make me patient, and that's what happened.
Oh, see, for me, asking for patience meant sitting in the Baltimore Beltway traffic, which, if anybody is from the East Coast, they know how bad that is. So, hmm, well, maybe I need to ask for a different kind of patience. I don't know. But yes, God is very faithful to teach us things that we need to know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then, Mateo visited me in Colorado and proposed there. And then I came and stayed with his family for 6 weeks after that. So I got to meet them and, had to get used to. So I stayed for 6 weeks and then came home. Um, and I visited again in the summer. And then we were married in September then of that next year.
So how did you decide where to live after you got married? You're in Colorado, he's in Italy.
Good
How'd you make
question.
that decision?
Well, like I said, he had like a real career. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that was sort of the one factor that, I wasn't doing anything necessarily meaningful in terms of work. I mean, I was a nanny and like that's great, you take care of the children and stuff, but he had already been with the company like 7 years at this time. So he was like pretty, well established as an employee of the company.
Yeah.
So we
So
said, we'll move there.
that makes sense. So I'll bet then you had a lot of adjustments to do. Did you learn Italian? Did you have cultural differences? Because you mentioned the difference in just the cultures in general.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, there are many, many challenges. So, first, obviously, leaving behind everything you've ever known is like pretty hard.
Hmm.
Um, the region that he's from is called Le Marche, so it's in the center on the east coast.
Okay.
Um, it's like the calf if you're looking at the boot, the calf of the boot.
Gotcha.
So, um, yes, it's not a particularly wealthy region of the country.
Hmm.
So it is a little bit simpler than some other areas. First of all, it's very unusual to have a dryer.
Okay.
So you have to hang all of your laundry, no matter what.
Yeah.
Second, the kitchens, this is honestly the greatest irony for me, Heather. The kitchens are tiny.
Hmm.
Our kitchen in our first apartment had 1 square meter of counter space
Wow.
and no dishwasher.
I
No
noticed.
dishwasher. That is, major luxury dishwasher. So just right there, in a country where the food is so important, to have no space to prepare it was just
Yeah.
maddening.
Especially if you're making
Um,
that homemade pasta and you have to
oh, you
go.
couldn't make it there. You couldn't make it because you don't have like the space, or if you use your table, you don't have like the leverage that you need.
Oh, wow. I
So,
didn't even think of that. Yeah.
yeah, because like as you're rolling it, you need the surface to be very like firmly attached to the floor.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just move the
Okay.
table with it, and it's
Yeah.
very annoying.
Well, I remember I went to Rome and Assisi for World Youth Day in 2000, and I remember not being accustomed to the fact that we were there in August, and air conditioning was also a luxury, and us Americans were not used to that, not having the air conditioning. So yes, I can remember.
It is brutal. The cultural differences were significant. Um, and then in terms of the language, I do speak Italian fluently, but I always say that I only did that because I had to. I'm a big believer for myself and for others that the only way to learn is if your survival depends on it in a lot of ways. You have to have a very strong motivator, something like that. Because for me, I couldn't not speak.
Right.
I couldn't not talk to anybody at the grocery store,
Yeah.
have no socialization for years. Like you just kind of go crazy. So
Right.
for me, it was like my survival instinct was like, all right, you got to figure it out, So the survival instinct helped, and then just not being afraid to just look really dumb all the time.
Yeah, I do remember that, especially like if we would go order something to eat or ask the concierge at the hotel, um, as long as we attempted to
Mhm.
speak or to ask in Italian, they were very, very helpful. If
Oh
you
yeah. Oh,
expected
the
them to
people are
speak
amazing.
English, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you expected them to accommodate you, no, they were not as friendly. And that makes, I mean, that makes perfect sense because you're coming to their country in their culture and you should adapt to them as opposed to expecting them to adapt to you. So yeah, I understood it and I did my best. I did not succeed.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if you just try, you know, um, you just try your best. And the Italian people, I think, are generally really good people. So,
Mm. Well, so I happen to know that you no longer live in Italy. So what brought you
right.
back to the States?
So we lived there for 4 years. Our first two children were born there.
Mhm.
And what we saw is that in Italy, that the system as it is today and the culture very much discourages innovation and change. And so also the economic system is flawed. It does not reward hard work. It disincentivizes hard work and advancement. And we, for ourselves and for our children, wanted a life that if you work harder, you get further. There were also some like major crackdowns on certain freedoms in Italy at that time as well.
Mhm.
And we just were not going to participate in that. So we left.
And so then what did he decide to do then? Because as you mentioned, he was really established in his career there. And so
Right?
now he's leaving and going
Right.
somewhere totally different.
Yes. No, that was a big challenge as well. So we lived in Colorado for about a year and a half, which is where my family is from.
Mhm.
And he did electrical work at that time. And then actually the company from Italy called and they asked to talk to him. And they wanted to open an office in Fort Lauderdale, an office for the Americas, and asked us to do that for them. And so we
Wow.
said yes. And so that's how we got down to South Florida. We moved down there to launch that for them.
Oh, wow. So you actually then have almost like a marrying of, what he was doing to now being in the States doing something very similar,
Exactly.
but
Exactly.
being in charge because you're opening this
More
office.
in charge than before. He was like a foreman before, and we were the only two employees of the company in the United States. But so for sure, we had more input than if there were more established employees here.
Mhm.
Um, but the corporate culture that they had weighed very heavily on the company here and held the
Okay.
company here back significantly. Whereas if they would have just listened to us, we probably would have been double where we got them. But we were with them for um, basically four years and 4.5 years, more or less 4.5 years. Um, and in the last year, we brought them. Um, it was a profitable year. We did 1.2 million that year.
Wow.
We paid back all the shareholder financing because that's how they financed it. We paid back all the shareholder financing so the company was like truly profitable, you know, and established when we left. Of course, us leaving wasn't helpful, but we gave them like 5 months of notice. It's like eventually, we gotta go, So he was mopping the floor, and literally God spoke to him and was like, "Okay, like you need to start a company that's all about values in the marketplace." And Matteo is no charismatic. Okay. So he came to me and was like, "So, like, this happened." And I was like, "I think it's great. That's great." What? And he was like, "Yeah, I didn't really know if I was going to tell you. Like, it sounds a little crazy." And I was like, "I think this is the thing we've been waiting for. I think it's it." So we're like, Okay, perfect. So then we met with my friend who was like involved in like venture capital and stuff, and we did our little pitch, 2 days after the idea, basically. Like
Hmm.
I emailed her a week later, we were talking to them, and um they stayed on with us for like 2 hours. Like, this is a great idea. Like, this is a lot of merit and all this stuff. So we're like, okay, let's try. So we're basically working on it. But we formed the company in November of 21.
Okay. It's all
And
happened
then,
quickly. Yes.
yeah, yeah. So then so we're working on this thing. The idea was like your values, whatever they are, you should be able to shop according to your values. So, like, if you're a Christian or a Catholic, you should be able to shop with Christian or Catholic businesses. If you are like super pro abortion, like, you should be able to shop with those businesses. Like, you want to support that? Okay. So that was sort of the concept, and we were building that. And time went on, and at the end of 2022, we were like, you know what? Like, we need to figure out how to do, like, what would we do if we had to make it work? We said, well, what would we do? And I think this is a good mental model for people who are working on a business on the side, who are like feeling that tug. Imagine if you had to make it work, what would you do?
Right.
Mentally, not actually, mentally go scorched earth.
Yeah.
What if you had to? And see, from there you start to become very resourceful, and you realize what needs to be done and all of that. And so for us, it was like, okay, well, if we had to make it work, we would send the kids to my parents for like 3 months to focus, and we would sell our house to cut the costs and get the equity out. Like, okay, well, we're not sending the kids away. We're not going to do that. So, um, but we can sell the house.
Yeah.
So we did. We sold our house. It had gone up like 65% in 2 years that we owned it.
Wow.
Um, I mean, the timing, Heather, was like absolutely God, like figuring it out,
Yeah.
because uh I don't know if that'll ever happen again. And we moved from that to a 3-bedroom townhouse built in 1983. And not only that, but it was like the ugliest orange inside that you have ever seen. So bad. Oh my
Oh.
gosh. I hated it every single day. But we sold the house. We moved to the townhouse in Delray, and I'll never forget standing on those stairs of this terrible old townhouse in this wonderful community of people. By the way, they're the nicest people we'd ever met in South Florida. I was standing there holding that baby with a 1 month old baby. We had the U-Haul ramp into the house. My husband and the boys are unloading stuff. And I looked around, and that was when the sacrifice really hit me of what we had given up. And at that moment, then I was consoled, because I realized this was just a grace.
Mhm.
Um, this is not our home anyway.
Yes. Hmm.
So
Yeah.
then I was fine, but like for sure, I will always remember, like, oh no. So then when we moved to Arkansas recently, I was like so glad to leave that house behind.
Oh.
So that's how we got to be all in with Catholic owned companies, because we went from the broad values based to a week after we were finished with that other company, we got like this whole conviction moment that we need to serve Catholics only. And so then we were all in on Catholic owned specifically. We got the domain, we got everything.
Well, since you've told us the name is Catholic owned, tell us what Catholic owned does.
Sure. Catholic owned, we are building the new Catholic economy. and we say we're building the new Catholic economy to reclaim the culture for Christ. Our vision is to make it easier to do business with other Catholics, whether you need to sell your house, buy a rosary, you need an electrical provider, a doctor, a lawyer, anything in between. We want to make it easy for you to choose to buy from a Catholic instead of the alternative. So the way we do that right now, we have an app that is basically a business directory. And that's sort of the foundation of the bigger picture that we're building. And in addition to the directory, we offer networking for our business owners, but we also have networking for Catholic professionals. So all of this in service of building the new Catholic economy.
Wonderful. And you mentioned the networking. I happen to know that that is a new
Yes,
I want to say arm, but arm may not is not the right word. A new addition to
yes,
Catholic owned, and it's such an interesting concept. And I will say that I've experienced it because you and I talked probably maybe a month or so ago about Catholic owned, and you shared it with me, and then proceeded to practice what you preach. And you said, "Hey, you should talk to this person because I think this person can help you." And then I did. That person was very, very welcoming to me. And in our conversation, he said, there's this other person that I think can help you in addition. So you need to go talk to this person. Well, I had that conversation probably about 24 hours ago. And just another absolutely genuine, warm person who is willing to help. And so that is networking right there,
yeah,
and that's what you're trying to do is put people in contact with each other who may know this or may know another person, and it helps to build that economy where people can work together that may not have ever had a chance to meet.
exactly. That's exactly it. And, yes, we have the digital tool, which is important. You need to be able to reference anytime. But we really believe heavily in human to human connection because everyone in your network, there's someone who could probably help me. And everyone in my network, there's probably someone who could help you. And the only way we can discover that is by us, even just a short conversation. It doesn't have to be an hour, um, just to connect and be thinking. And this is the heart of Catholic speed networking is um, be thinking who do I know that has what this person is telling me they need? And who do I know that offers what they need or has what they need or needs what they offer?
Mhm. Yeah, both directions. Yes.
You know, so that sort of proactive approach of yes, we're building real relationships with fellow Catholics, but we're being proactive about it. And because no digital tool could ever encompass the entire network, in my view, and all of the connections that we all have in our brains. I mean,
Yeah.
so the way that we want to do that is we get people together um, and get them having, brief 10-minute conversations and then decide to take the conversation further or not. The thing with Catholic Speed Networking, like you said, it's a new program for us. The members, they have 4 opportunities a month to come to these speed networking format events. And not only do they speak with a handful of Catholics on every call, but then after we actually curate and do 3 custom introductions for every attendee of every call.
That is very
So,
very valuable.
yeah,
Yes, very.
thank you so much. Thank you. Because, someone has to be making the connections. Of course, obviously, God is at work. I think as
Right.
soon as
Yeah.
2 of us get together, God can really start revealing things and the promptings of the Holy Spirit to make
Hmm.
those connections. Um, Whereas if we never get together, there's less opportunity for that, right?
Exactly.
Um, but at the same time, I also am a big believer that when we ask people to use their time to attend an event, we want to give them a practical value that they can take away. Of course, our faith is at the center of everything we do, but people also need real support. They genuinely need what they need. And if they're
Mhm.
coming to us to make those connections, then we feel we have a responsibility to facilitate those connections with people in our network. So that's our approach. Um, and so some of the introductions we do, typically they're with other networkers in the group.
Mhm.
Um, but also, sometimes they need to meet one of our featured business members from our directory. Sometimes it's just another contact, another app user that we know. So we really are doing that heavy lifting of creating those connections. Um, so you can jump on, have a 10-minute conversation, see if it goes anywhere. But it's based on a real reason to connect as opposed
Right.
to just a random thing. So, and sometimes random is good too. but but we want to
Well,
try to make a good use of people's time as well, you
well,
know.
yeah. Our what happened with us was kind of random because I responded to a survey. I have been using the app
Right.
for I don't know. I've probably been using the app since shortly after it was released. And I used it for finding businesses and finding services that I would need. And you sent out a survey to the app users, and I responded, and we ended up on a conversation. And the goal of that conversation, from my perspective, was to talk about Catholic owned and what you were doing and my opinions of it. And
Right.
yet you took a few minutes at the end of that conversation to ask about me and what I was doing and what I potentially needed. And that's what led to, hey, I know someone. And so it was that random connection. And now I have two other connections in two different states that I would have never heard of. And so,
Wow.
so that it's a blessing. And then in addition, I do have the services that I've already sought out just on the app alone. So
Right.
it has been a blessing. It's been a blessing in my life. And so to that end, how would people, if they want to just use the app or if they want to use the app and take advantage of the speed networking, how can they do that?
Yeah, so they can visit our website, catholicowned.com. There you can download the app. It's available for iOS and Android. And the other thing with the app is that it's accessible on the website. If you just click sign up, if you prefer a computer, not everyone wants another app. So you can use it on your computer as well. One login for all of them. Um, and then if you would like to join networking, um, you can go to catholicowned.com/Catholic Speed Networking. Or you can just click the connect tab within the app, and register for the events. You'll be prompted to sign up as a networker.
Well, that is awesome, and I'm looking forward to checking it out and
Yes.
learning more and meeting more people because it's about relationships. We need to do business. We need stuff. We need to further our own businesses, and it's just nice to know the people
Mhm.
behind the businesses. So.
Exactly. Exactly. And sometimes you just need a little help breaking the ice,
Mhm.
so you don't have to be the one to reach out and organize and everything.
slip
It's
in
like,
slip into somebody's DMs, right?
exactly. Exactly. It's like, let us be setting up all of it so you don't have to feel awkward. We're gonna put you in and everybody go.
Well,
So it's good.
I look forward to my first meeting, and yeah, and so one thing I'm gonna totally pivot for a minute. One thing
Sure.
I'd like to ask all of my guests is if you have any warrior words, and I'd like to ask that in respect to maybe marrying somebody who has has a lot of differences with you. Like you shared with us all the different cultural differences and then the language barrier. What would your advice be to someone who is maybe in a situation like that, should I marry this person? Should I not? We have so much, we love each other, but
Yeah. I mean, I always hesitate to tell other people what to do. And
fair enough.
people ask me for like dating advice. I have none. I just showed up to the slums of Calcutta and my husband was dropped in my lap. So, you know, that's the framing. But I would, if someone is in sort of an intercultural relationship, I would just say do not underestimate the differences that you're going to have that exist. Um, do not minimize them. Do not pretend they are not there. Uh, it will be a problem. So, what you do about that problem is totally up to you and the other person. If it's meant
Hmm.
to be, it's meant to be. Um,
Right.
but don't think that the cultures are similar enough that it's never going to come up. You think Italian and American, those are both pretty similar cultures, you would think, and actually they're totally different.
Yes, based on what you shared of your experience. Yes. Yeah.
And some of that is marriage, but don't underestimate how challenging intercultural marriage can be.
I think that's good advice. And it's, yes, it's not telling someone do this or don't do it. It's saying go in with your eyes wide open, no rose-colored glasses.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Brooke, I thank you for your time. And I thank you for being willing to work with your husband and just say, what is it going to take? And
Yeah.
then listening to the Holy Spirit and diving in and creating this way for people to meet and form those relationships. So I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Heather. Thank you for being such a long time supporter. We really appreciate it.
More to come, more to come. So the theme I took away from my conversation with Brooke was relationships. Her story of meeting and marrying Matteo illustrated for me that God is in the relationship business. Not only that, God is both willing and able to make a way for a relationship that might never have happened. The Holy Spirit kept prompting Brooke to go to India. She kept thinking about it, balking a little bit, but then in the exact moment when God knew her husband to be would be there, he made a way for Brooke to finally say yes and go. And then there was that kind older gentleman on the bus who made an assumption about Brooke and Matteo based on the standards and norms of their culture. And the seed was planted. And given her story, it seems like they never really looked back. But while God makes a way, he doesn't make it easy. Because what do we learn from easy? Usually, not too much. They had language barriers, cultural differences. And then there were the challenges Brooke faced that were associated with giving up everything you know to be with your husband across the world. Brooke had to learn a whole new way of life. But then that life had a ceiling that neither of them wanted for their children. So they moved to the United States. And this then presented its own set of challenges with them essentially starting over. So I love how Brooke cautioned us not to ignore differences or think that they won't matter. It is hard. It will take work. But if it's a relationship that God wants, He will make a way. And then I love how God brought relationships back to the forefront of their lives after they realized that the business they were working, even though it was familiar because it was the same Italian business that Matteo had worked before, but as soon as they realized that this was not what they were supposed to be doing, God brought relationships back in a different way. During a stressful, chaotic, almost desperate time, Brooke and Matteo humbled themselves and were obedient to the promptings of the Holy Spirit to create a business that centers around relationships, especially with the new networking program she talked about. Business shouldn't just be transactional. God made us relational. So, whether you use the Catholic owned app or not, think about how your next purchase can be more relational, more intentional. Now, I know we all love the convenience of certain online retailers, and I don't think either one of us is asking you to let go of those completely, at least not in the beginning, right? But always remember that there's a person. There's a person behind every business. Someone who needs to take care of a spouse. Someone who must care for children. And then maybe choose to spend your dollars a little more wisely and possibly have a conversation, a relationship with a real person. Something to think about this week. Until we meet again, armor up, fight the good fight, seek beauty, and make your words warrior words. God bless.